Sophie, welcome back to my channel. Really happy to have you here. Today is a video on tax and consumer and producer incidence. It's really exciting. It's part 3 of the series. Take a look at the other links below if you've just come to this and want to revise either tax revenue or how a tax changes a supply curve. Assuming you've got that really well, here is what we're going to find. So consumers often end up paying for part of a tax that's been imposed on firms by the government. Why does this happen? So we've already taken a look and we found that turns out that firms tend to raise prices when they've been taxed. Therefore, the consumer is going to end up having those higher prices and end up paying for part of the tax. At the same time, producers kind of get a little bit lucky because they got all this tax that they have to pay, but luckily they can raise their prices a bit, and as a result their profits aren't harmed so much. So that's what we're going to go into, exactly how much consumers and producers have been impacted by this tax. And here I have a definition. A consumer incidence is the tax due to the government that the firm had to pay, but it's been passed on to the consumers via higher prices. That's a really tricky definition. I'm not necessarily a fan of writing down definitions per se, it's more about prioritizing your understanding. But I've written that down in maybe a slightly different format to see which of these two versions appeal to you. Consumer incidence, the calculation is the increase in the prices. And honestly, this works just fine to do it this way, times the quantity that they have bought. By the way, there has been a tax. The tax has reduced the quantity that consumers have bought. They're only buying Q2. Therefore, that quantity purchased is Q2. And when I say OQ2, I mean everything up to Q2 has been bought, which I think is more accurate than saying just Q2 has been bought. Everything up to Q2 has been bought. To work out the increase in prices, I've done it in maths, I guess. You could just look at what the difference is between the original price and the new price. And that's what I mean there. That's P2 minus P1. And again, all the units up to Q2 have been purchased by consumers. Okay, so here we have two graphs. One is inelastic demand and one is elastic. So this is your elastic case and this is your relatively inelastic case. And I've drawn the tax revenue due for both. And to work out the consumer incidence, remember we need to find the quantity, Q2. And actually, technically, everything up to Q2 was sold. So everything up to Q2 was sold for both of these. And each of these Q2 units meant that the consumer had to pay a higher price on them. The price that the consumer originally paid was P1. And the price that they pay now is P2. So the difference between them, how much consumers have had to pay extra, is that much. And is a little bit here. P1 to P2 is a little bit smaller and in the more elastic case. Okay, so the consumer incidence, we're going up by the price increase and we're going across by the quantity sold, and we're being asked in this equation to multiply them. Multiply the price increase times the quantity. So we're doing the height times the length and we're going to get another rectangle. So specifically, this area here, this shaded area here is the consumer incidence. In the other case, because the price has only increased by a little bit, but it's increased by a little bit for this many units, the consumer incidence is a lot smaller. The firm has not been able to pass on as much of the tax due onto the consumer as in the more inelastic case. Oh, I have to emphasize that this is actually really difficult to compare the inelastic and the elastic case properly. You have to be really sure to make everything else constant. So in your notes, be sure, I'm going to challenge you. This is really difficult. The challenge is, can you draw the graphs with the same P1, the same Q1, the same tax, the same S1 and the same S2? The only thing you're changing is the elasticity. That's really tough to draw, something worth practicing to make this as accurate as possible of a diagram. For producer incidence, we're looking at the remaining tax due that the firm has been unable to pass on to the consumers via higher prices. And you can calculate it by taking the tax due, that, the original white box, and remove the blue box, the consumer incidence. You're going to find if it's inelastic, consumer incidence is higher, and producer incidence therefore is lower. The other way around for the elastic case. Jot those down, those are really important. And let's have a look back to the graphs here. We know that the firm had to pay all of this white area in tax, but then they got the consumers to pay for all of the blue one. So as a result, the firm only has to, this in pink, only has to pay the remaining amount there. Therefore, for the inelastic case, the producer incidence is actually quite low. For the elastic case, the firm has to pay all the white area in tax, and they've only been able to pass on that tax a little bit to the consumer. As a result, they are left with this much to pay just by themselves. So that's the producer incidence. And that's the conclusion that we've just talked about now. If it's PED inelastic, consumer incidence is higher, so producer incidence is lower, and the other way around for the elastic case. Hopefully that was really useful. 3 mini video series, and let me know in the comments if you have any other questions, any other video suggestions. Happy to have a go at them. Okay, but thank you so much. Bye.